Everyone has that game or genre that really impacted people as they grew up. And for me, it was JRPGs, as they have been a big part of my life, with me growing up on a lot of the large titles like Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, or Nier, leaving a lasting impact over the years on what I really enjoy. But eventually, as I grew up, I fell a bit out of love with JRPGs and got more into Halo, Uncharted, Armored Core, and Mass Effect. But there was still a soft spot for JRPGs that a specific franchise managed to hit just right and make me fall in love all over again. Xenoblade Chronicles, which has been very near and dear to my heart ever since I was around 12 when I first got my hands on the original game for the Wii. And man, I absolutely fell in love. The story, the characters, the world, the combat, and the music. Oh, the music absolutely blew me away in every way. Hell, I have that menu as my wallpaper to this day. It should be no surprise given how much I love the game, I went on to grab and actually enjoy Xenoblade 2 when I got my Switch, despite the very anime traits of that game.
Poppy?
How may I be of service, Master?
And loved Xenoblade Chronicles 3 even more when it came out several years later. And then, nothing really came out for a long while on that Switch that interested me, and as a result, I kinda left the series and the console behind. Until recently after getting into my Mecha binge, another love of mine, and discovering Xenoblade Chronicles X, the lone Mecha Chronicles game in an entirely self-contained world from the rest of the Chronicles franchise. Just looking at this game, you can tell this game is something different than the rest of the series with a different art style, semi-grounded sci-fi premise, and of course the awesome looking mecha known as Skells. So of course I had to check it out, and I love and slightly dislike what I found. Quick word of warning, this was emulated on cemu almost flawlessly. I just had the lighting set weird for about half the game, but it's not the game's fault, it's most definitely mine. And for the Nintendo ninjas out there, yes, this is indeed a legal emulation. Xenoblade X is the black sheep of sorts in the Chronicle series, releasing right after the first game in the series in 2015. One of the most absolutely stacked years for gaming, with so many amazing titles like MGS5.
I actually remember they asked to scan my like underneath my feet for a reference when I was at Consumer Production.
Bloodborne, Dying Light, Undertale, and even Halo Guard. Actually, we can leave that one out of the list. Given such a year, it gave the Monolith team, made of former Square devs, a hard time in standing out, which X did with something a little different for the franchise, where Xenoblade had a semi-open world with a tight cast of characters that is very story-focused, with a very fantasy sci-fi aesthetic. X instead is incredibly open, with an entire world able to explore and learn about, a large cast of characters if you seek them out, like a literal child who's a tank, a girl failure, and the scientist from Ace Combat 7. It also has a purely mecha sci-fi aesthetic with a more realistic art style than the rest of the series, pulled together by a soundtrack that is made by Hiroyuki Sawano of all people. and is more gameplay focused than story focused as a whole, leaning into Xenoblade's more MMO-esque properties, to the point as to start us off with the full character creator where you can even choose your voice, although they will be a completely silent protagonist in story or mission events, which will scare some fans of the franchise off immediately, since the voice protagonists have been a great highlight before, like Shulk or Noah. But for me, it wasn't too big of a deal, as I enjoyed a lot of silent protagonists in RPGs like Fallout, before 4, at least initially. But before we get there, what are we exactly doing on this alien planet? Xenoblade X starts off with 2 alien races. Say hi, since we won't see one of them ever again, a victim of the fact that this game has a large amount of cut content. They are waging a war right above Earth in this really cool opening cutscene, where as a result of being caught in the conflict, Earth is torn asunder and destroyed. But a lucky few managed to get out on a few escape crafts known as arcs, one of which was known as the White Whale, and we're on it, right before it was chased by one of the alien races and downed onto the planet of Mira. Several months later, our life pod is located by the survivors, and we are awoken by a woman known as Elma, we'll talk about her later, who discovers we conveniently have amnesia after the crash. I always make fun of the amnesia excuse, but it really is a good way to set up a character. She then recruits us into her team and takes us to New LA. An unfortunate name, since after visiting LA myself, I find we most certainly don't need another one. New LA is humanity's new home on Mira that has only recently been established after the crash, where we meet our second party member, Lynn, a genius 15-year-old who spends her time making Mecha fanfiction. This isn't a joke.
You know what I'm talking about. Actually, I don't normally show this to people, but I've been working on Scout fanfiction.
No!
Hold on, I'll just
No!
1 sec.
Lynn.
No! She did not just say that. She did not just say that.
Originally, skills were developed.
There's no way that's real dialogue. And we learn about Blade, the PMC consisting of multiple parts dedicated to building a life here on Mira for humanity, protecting New LA, and finding the remnants of the White Whale, namely the Lifehold core that contains the rest of the survivors. Our place in the story is as new members of Blade trying to assist in humanity's survival on this strange new world by finding the life core and developing a relationship with humanity's new home. And the main story kinda takes a backseat for a while, with some actually really good pacing, as now it's all up to you to decide what to do and find your place in this world. Speaking of, let's start on a high note with Mira itself, as it really is the highlight of X. Mira is an absolutely gorgeous planet with plenty of unique locations to explore, people to meet, treasure to find, and enemies to kill. The world itself consists of 5 different and vast locations, consisting of Primordia's wide plains, Noctilum's dense and beautiful jungles, Oblivia's sunny deserts, Cauldro's smoldering volcanoes, and hints of an ancient advanced civilization that's long gone, with all of the locations having secrets to find. And of course, you can't have an open world that doesn't have inhabitants, and Mira has plenty of alien life to keep you interested. First of all, there's the local wildlife inhabiting most of the land and keeping it alive. And these aliens are in fact very alien, with all sorts of familiar and totally crazy designs keeping your interest as they live their lives, making it feel like you're in an ecosystem, including predators or hostile animals that will attack you on sight, making even the peaceful areas require some sort of caution. Looking towards more native intelligent life, we have the always fun Nopons back again, or the they just call them L, so we'll just stick with that. Outside of the natives, we have the alien coalition that chased and downed us over Mira, the Ganglion. Think of them kind of like the Covenant for now, except here it's only slightly religious for one race and more forced servitude for the others. This gives us a large range of species we meet over time, like the weirdly hot cat people, the Ganglion themselves, Prones, and even more that I won't name here. Despite their mix of cultures and species, they form one semi-unified force and will be the other faction that has somewhat of a foothold here on Mira, with large fortresses, camps, and patrols littering all of the continents. One small complaint I do have with these alien races is I kind of wish they were more alien. I like to compare this to Mass Effect, where each race is unique and foreign in their own ways, looking like actual aliens from stupid jellyfish, bugs and the Rachni, whatever the Elcor is supposed to be, or something more humanoid like the Turians or Quarians. But we can still relate to them and talk to them at the end of the day, since they are just people despite how weird they might look to us. But here we have almost strictly humanoid species that are sentient and designed to look weirdly sexually provocative in some cases. I would like to say this type of thing doesn't actually bother me, and I love plenty of games that do designs like this. It's just out of left field here, and I found myself scoffing or laughing at the designs semi-frequently. Okay, wow, that is not the design I expected from that race, okay, wow. But despite that slight issue that many probably don't have, I find myself using a term I don't throw around often, but Mira really does feel incredibly immersive and an absolute blast to go around just to see the new sights, which is helped by the fact that outside of fast traveling in about 2 buildings, you can actually go just about anywhere with 0 loading screens hindering you, as everything here is connected by land and sea, making travel incredibly immersive since you can in fact see that mountain and go there. Hell, I was personally blown away when first seeing Svalbard and realizing I could actually do this when going into Oblivious Desert, honestly putting Mira into one of my favorite open worlds, and I'll go as far as saying that in terms of content, I find it even better than Breath of the Wild, giving it the spot of the best open world on the Wii U. Now, if only people bought that console. It certainly helps that this game isn't a typical Ubisoft checklist game or generic open world, where exploring feels like a chore with menial things to collect and do. Every bit of exploration here feels meaningful in some way, whether that's finding useful weapons, planting probes, finding routes to run the hell away from a high-level enemy, to finding a mission you weren't expecting to. One thing to note about this world you will either love or absolutely hate is actually soundtrack related. As mentioned before, the OST is made by Hiroyuki Sawano, who I absolutely adore, and it's certainly the OST doesn't really feel fantasy like the other games, and here more sci-fi exploration? I'm not really sure how to put it, but it really makes you feel like you're exploring a distant planet and strange unfamiliar lands, and has some great bangers like Svalbard Nighttime, or my personal favorite, The Blade Barracks, and By My Side for story moments.
Focus on the fundamentals. I remember now. Leon used to stay late and just drill on the basics for hours and hours.
So, who is this Leon anyway?
He was my best friend.
Leon was Arena's younger brother, Gwen. He didn't make it on board the White Whale.
Oh, Gwen. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. It's just, he was my hero, you know? Always looking out for me.
But then there's this really bad New LA day and night themes that I kid you not used an awful free sample.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I really didn't need a guy and girl moaning into my ear all the time, and it's especially egregious that they put these OSTs in the areas you will be in the most, since it's literally where most of the story quests will be grabbed from. But regardless, over time, you will get very intimate with this planet via a service Blade is relying on known as the Frontier Nav. This is the obligatory Wii U feature that pushes you to actually explore and discover this world's secret in an actually reasonable way, since as the new inhabitants, we have to do this to understand our new world and spread democracy. Frontier Nav, in simple terms, is your world map, and as you can see, it's segmented into a metric ton of hexagons. These hexes don't only represent the location on the map, but also what type of content you can find there, as well as the survey rate of the world, which requires completion of the segment's content, and this is often required for main or side missions. This content can consist of everything from quests, rare loot, probes which you place to get a steady supply of resources from the area like money or the valuable Miranium, which is used in a lot of crafting or developing the new industry brought to Mira in the form of arms manufacturers that, when leveling up, unlock new wares you can purchase and use. Most useful for you though is that the probes make a new fast travel point and note a powerful enemy known as Indigens that must be killed for the safety of New LA is somewhere in the area. And speaking of killing things, let's get to the combat system and gameplay of X. Xenoblade X, as mentioned before, leans into the more MMO-esque features of the series while keeping its overall identity, with controls being mostly the same outside of the sprint being really fast and the jump being surprisingly high, allowing you to get really anywhere if you try hard enough. And I really love this, as I only really feel restricted by my own determination rather than the devs just saying no due to a skill issue like 2's awful field skills. But getting to the deeper systems, firstly, you can have a party of up to 4 characters including yourself, and you can control anyone you wish. Although, to my annoyance, for story missions you must have Elma, Lynn, and yourself, making it essentially one extra choice for a party member, which often needed to be a healer. The game then segments each character into classes like Tank, Debuffer, and Damage, all of which you can swap between and level as you wish, unlike the large cast of 18 party members, a record for the series who are locked to a class. But you can actually change their equipment in its entirety, which, given this game has real-time cutscenes, did in fact ruin some things for me because I couldn't take them seriously. And yes, this is totally my fault. Yeah, I want to see Irina's other heart-to-heart, so I'm just kind of taking her on for some other quests, even though I don't have a lot of affinity with her. She's leveled actually pretty high.
Is there a new job for
I forgot she was wearing that. Whoops.
That's right. It's immediate.
These classes are then further defined by weapons that they can use, like the Samurai being able to use a sword and a rifle, the Jaguar being able to use knives and dual SMGs, or tanks who have shields and machine guns, allowing you to lean into one type of build if you really wish, as arts are tied to the weapon. But even with these weapon restrictions, after maxing the class you choose, the game has this really cool feature that you can use that class's featured weapon in any other class, encouraging you to mix and match whatever you love to make a perfect custom class, letting you develop your character like you're really in this world, learning skills from the others you travel along with. When actually fighting with this gear is almost the same as the other games. Here we can swap between our 2 weapons and use them as we see fit. But swapping here makes their respective arts recharge much faster. This is useful as allies, like in other games, will shout out something requesting you to perform a certain action in combat that will augment the art in some way, such as boosting the damage, or, more importantly, healing your characters, as there really isn't a dedicated healing class in this game, and it really wasn't explained that all well, leading me and a lot of people being pretty confused on exactly how to heal and just resulting to Googling it. This is called the Soul Voice system, and if you so desire, you can actually change the voice lines completely to your taste. But personally, I thought it was just fine and never really tinkered with it outside of making it so I had a couple more healing options. Now, when fighting enemies, there is the traditional level system that will run your shit if you're 5 levels down, and have directional damage from some arts. But to my remembrance, this is the only title where limb targeting is a giant part of combat you really do need to take full advantage of. This lets you target any part of the body to sever or destroy it, doing bonus damage and causing that limb's attack to be disabled, making this incredibly important for surviving harder encounters where enemies have absurd amounts of damage and health. This system was actually a pleasant surprise, and I was a giant fan of this, adding a lot more depth and engagement to combat, opposed to just wailing on a dude till he eventually dies, especially since the enemies actually lose parts as you sever them and destroy them, making for some really cool feelings when fighting machines, or kind of grossed out against organic enemies as they fall apart, kind of reminding me of Doom to some extent. And to add icing to the cake, When destroying specific lens, you actually have a chance to get certain drops from them, making it worth trying at least once, as there's a goal on top of just killing the enemies. There's also the overdrive system here, which uses TP points to activate. The same number, in fact, you need to res a teammate, making you decide if you want to push damage or get someone back in the fight. This makes the game go from slow, semi-turn-based game to a hack and slash with your abilities having incredibly low cooldowns and having another level it can go to where each thing has another new ability, like extending the overdrive or increasing limb damage by like hundreds of %. Despite not having a cool cutscene, this might be my favorite Xenoblade Overdrive just for the fact that if you do it right, you never have to leave it, which lets you absolutely tear through every single enemy you see. And going back to the OSTs, the battle themes in this game are also interesting. Most of them are actually really good as long as you don't pay too much attention to the lyrics, and others are honestly still stuck in my head and reminded me that this is, in fact, a Hiroyuki Sawano OST, like Uncontrollable, which is my personal favorite, and actually has more views than the amount of people that bought the game. Now, you might have noticed and asked one of two things. Those guys are really big. How do I, a normal human, beat that? And where are the mecha skills you mentioned before we see all over Mira? Well, that is actually tied together. Xenoblade X adopts something known as the size system to organize enemies. We have 3 notable sizes: small, big, and really big. On foot, you can easily handle small and big enemies, but really big becomes pretty much impossible, at least early on, with them even just stomping you away. The solution to this is after you hit level 25 and complete chapter 6, where you can access your first skill, after, I shit you not, taking a license exam where you do a bunch of busy work. I kind of respect the gall to actually make us take an exam to unlock these, and it's actually a cool way to explain how you get one by proving yourself, rather than just being chosen or good at it as soon as you get in one, like the usual mecha pilots in media, like Amuro Ray or Shinji Ikari to some extent. These things are giant mecha consisting of 3 types: light, medium, and heavy, which have larger health, fuel consumption, and lower evasion the heavier you go. When moving around, you have typical movement, but when sprinting you go into vehicle mode, and later you unlock the amazing flight module that lets you soar through the skies and reach previously unreachable areas on Mira. And the feeling of unlocking flight was one of the best in any game I've ever played, especially with that theme kicking in as soon as you take flight. You can also customize armor completely, although visually it doesn't really change. But more importantly, you can change every single weapon on your skill. Instead of having arts intrinsically tied to the skill, every weapon has unique attacks and abilities suited for different tasks like mech damage up, ranged attack up, or taunts. Some weapons like the Buster, drones, or even the big Giga weapon can often one-shot enemies with a single blow, or at least chunk their health. The overdrive system also remains here, as well as the soul voice system, although overdrive is a bit easier to keep up. There's also a cockpit mode, which was one of the things that wasn't remotely explained, and I had to figure it out myself. This puts you in cockpit view, which makes you immune to all damage during its duration and refreshing all cooldowns when you enter it, making this often a lifesaver, or turning some bosses into a complete breeze if you're lucky and get multiple cockpit views back to back to back.
Deploying shield.
thank the egg. Eat science. Time for a little.
This does bring up the theme in the Xenoblade games of having awful tutorials though, where 1 had a decent amount explained with fun bits, 2 managing to over and under explain at the same time with awful pacing where mechanics were just held off until the game lets you have them, and 3's actually good pacing and delivering of mechanics. X kinda has a mix of the 3, with the game for the most part pacing things well and giving mostly what you need outside of the cockpit, size, and healing. Which you eventually will figure out yourself. Personally, I see this as a level of immersion, as you kind of have to learn things like we learn on Mira. But yeah, that's definitely a cove. But getting back to business, there is of course a trade-off to this amount of power in your hands. If you die, you yourself are actually fine since it's just a mech, but the skull is destroyed, requiring you to pay insurance that gets increasingly more expensive the more you die. So it's an okay buddy moment, but just don't die. And when in combat, using arts, or when flying, you consume the fuel gauge, and once it hits 0, the skull will shut down, requiring you to wait a while for it to come back, or you can spend a large amount of uranium to refuel it faster, making the fuel system a bit of a minigame you have to manage and decide if you prefer big damage at the cost of only a handful of attacks before long cooldowns and being out of fuel, or more attacks that may initially hit less hard, but can sustain a fight longer. The other weakness is you are also now a victim to directional damage, with the ability to lose limbs that will do large amounts of damage to you and ruin your DPS by removing the attack and its related arts. If you are unlucky and lose your gun arm like I did once, you can avoid this by having a dedicated healing skill on your team, pushing damage as fast as possible, or making you sure you have at least one thing that restores limb health, which was my solution. You can additionally spec into skills even more with your ground gear, with scale gear giving you the option of less armor where on foot for massive scale buffs from damage, evasion, to even fuel efficiency, making scale something you can stay in almost 24/7 if you really want to, like I tried. Although there are some parts where you will have to get out of the scale because it's either disabled or simply too big to enter the area. It's a great system that doesn't feel exactly like Pacific Rim 3 The Return of Christ or My Love, but it's still an amazing feeling. I will admit, despite how good all of this does end up feeling, the first 20 hours or so do admittedly feel incredibly slow and slightly boring, as you have to actually get most of these arts unlocked, and of course, unlock the skill, leaving a lot of early game as kinda boring, use 2 skills, auto attack while you wait, and then you finally have your turn to play again. And even with the skills, they are actually locked at levels 25, 30, 50, 60, and 90, making them stuck at that level and leaving a large amount of time before the next skill unlock. It is worth noting, however, after sticking it out and getting through the early game slug, you really do feel rewarded for doing so, and it feels better than any of the other games when you go from waiting for attacks to being active on the battlefield and pacing your abilities with your allies to get the right healing so you can stick it through a long and hard fight. So, now we have our mini tools of the trade, but who and what are we exactly fighting for? After all, we have to have a purpose for saving this world and daily life outside of the unknown mini in the Lifeboat core, and that lies in the party members you meet, the population of NLA, and the aliens you become friends with. Personally, we have exactly 3 types of missions, and I'll call them just missions for a very specific reason. The 3 types are story quests that advance the more main plot, regular missions that consist of a variety of jobs from collecting materials, killing a target, or something more personal like helping our favorite girl failure Mia as she tries to become a blade, finding alien refugees and helping them come to New LA, which will add new residents and even more missions. The big theme is just getting you into the daily life, problems or events of Mira and New LA to give you a better attachment to the world we now live on. Some of these quests even have branching routes, making you actually have to listen to and read dialogue for the best outcome, as characters can actually die here if you don't pay attention to even just a small amount of dialogue, such as this mission where you need to repair a helicopter, and using the wrong wire will kill someone. And the only way to know what's good is just remembering a piece of dialogue some engineers are talking about in New LA. Personally, I love this. I love getting to know this world even in the stupid quests. There's just so much charm, humor, and genuinely great storytelling just left for you to find if you're willing to go look for it. And like I said, I was in fact willing, doing more side quests than I ever did in any game, which did delay this video a little for the sake of completion, which my girlfriend had to witness my addiction to after telling her and myself I would do the main story, only to get sidetracked for about 10 quests in a row.
Oh, hey, playing the game for my video.
Oh shit, Xenoblade X. Alright, I'm gonna just hang out, watch. Wait, I thought you said you're gonna be finishing this game soon. What are you doing all these side quests for?
I see them and then I have to do them, you know.
You're delaying your review. Come on, man. What are you doing?
Yeah. Anyways.
No!
Which is pretty easy to do, especially given the next mission type, affinity quests. These are the actual missions that give you quality time with the main and side cast, and is the big reason I try to avoid calling any of these side missions, because they add so much character and are often needed to progress the story at all. Luckily, they're 100% worth doing, and I loved almost every single one of them. These affinity missions work just like the previous games. After progressing the story and meeting new people, some will become available as party members. When in the party, they gain affinity when activating a soul voice, but also when choosing certain dialogue options and missions that they like, encouraging you to always have a full party, so you can actually get those relationship points with your allies. Although to my dismay, they don't actually have anything to say or add in when coming on missions, which is kind of annoying to me, as I'd like if they chimed in like in Mass Effect, instead of just being a wall who doesn't really respond to any stimuli, especially since each of the 18 party members are interesting in their own way and have their own problems. For example, there's Lynn, who as mentioned before is the child genius, but one whose equally genius parents didn't make the cut for the white whale, dying in an accident, leaving her kind of alone in a new world initially, with a lot to live up to, so she's doing everything she can for the city. Hell, we are first introduced to her trying to get her final homework assignment actually put it done, which is making Skells fly, and it fails, with its success not seen until much later in the middle of the game, where she desperately wants to get this done. Especially now since she actually made really close connections to the people of New LA, including Elma, Yu, Lao, and our resident Nopon Tatsu, who she always jokes about eating since she's the team cook who cooks us all a meal every chapter.
Lindley! What is Lindley making?
Beef braised in wine. Hey, Tatsu, why don't you relax and take a bath before dinner? Got one all ready for you.
Tatsu love nice and hot bath before eating. Did Lindley use bath salts? Color and smell is lovely, just like it. Lindley, this is not bathtub. This is pot of boiling wine.
Little Spud's smarter than he looks. I suppose I'm just gonna have to use regular old beef instead.
Lindley is not funny. Lindley is not funny.
These jokes never got old to me. We also have Lao, an older veteran of the last war on Earth whose wife and child was left behind. A lot of people don't like him because he's kinda mopey throughout the game, but I kinda like how we have someone like him. A person who's lost everything and trying to do what he can for the people he has now, while coming to terms with what's happened, often with him leaving the team to fight on his own for both safety and the avoidance of connection. But one thing I love about all this is it isn't just doom and gloom. We also have people trying to make it big here with equally big personalities. As mentioned before, there's my personal favorite HB, a perfectionist with a big ego who views us as a rival for the new commander of Blade. The Commander Vandam himself, a mountain of a man who fills the fiery commander archetype, while having a really good heart and being incredibly overworked. There are also aliens like L, who has an interesting personality and attempts and fails of plenty of human sayings, kinda like Garrus from Mass Effect, or Celica fighting to keep her friends safe. There's so many characters that have a variety of personalities and stories to share, showing you all the walks of life that have bunkered down here on Mira, but working together for a common goal. This personally made me do something I also haven't done since Mass Effect. Try and recruit every single character and see every story. I wanted to get to know all of these characters and try my best to make Mira a home for humanity and all the new wacky races I came across. And it felt really rewarding seeing New LA get more populated and developed as you do these missions. It of course helps that despite my memory of Xenoblade games generally having questionable voice acting, this game's voice acting is actually quite good and a breath of fresh air, lacking a lot of the questionable moments that the previous games had.
Hum hum! Hum here! Hum here! Hum who? Hum who? Hum hum everywhere! Me want touch hum hum!
What the hell?
Sort of like the game's main story, which I quite enjoyed, but a lot of people don't consider to be the highlight of X, since it does take a backseat to the gameplay, which I also do agree with. So let's talk about it. After a short few missions, learning the ropes of Frontier Nav and what indigents are, we are formally accepted into Blade, officially now part of Team Elma, with the first mission of finding a Pathfinder team that went missing. And all we know is that their skull is broken down. Reaching their last location, we confirm that the skull is destroyed, which seems to be caused more by gunfire and explosions rather than locals. As here we are introduced to the Prone, the Ganglions' main fighting force who are completely unwilling to talk, to the point of, when reaching the commander, he demands the extinction of humanity, as we are apparently trespassers and he's killed the Pathfinder team as a result, effectively ending all hope for a peaceful resolution, as killing on a first contact is kind of a bad idea the Turians have made before, requiring us to fight. I honestly was a really big fan of this opening and think despite the pacing, it was actually a very good way of getting you to care for what's going on. A good mix between 2's character building in the intro and 3's action that immediately gets you invested, which for some people might be ruined by the next event when we finally meet Tatsu, our first Nopon. He's our first native here on Mira and serves as our major piece of first-hand native info on what's happening on this planet, and vows to help us. Although he is in fact a pacifist, which means most of his fights end up being him ordering us around, thinking he's the big guy in charge. Personally, I loved his wacky personality you expect from Nopons, and his jokes about us being Team Tatsu instead of Team Elma. But I will admit, if you don't like Nopons and their more wacky side, you might actually hate this guy, and a lot of people do. But I quite enjoy his role as a guide, Nopon representative, and Lin's almost cookie ingredient here on Mira. Despite how Tatsu he is, he's actually quite eager to help us out in our next mission to locate the newly detected lifehold unit, where along the way there we meet L.
Another Xeno.
Whatever it is, at least it's not a Prone.
Perish the thought, good sirs. Perish and kill the thought. We would never associate with those savages.
Who are you?
Yes, 1,000 pardons. We are called El Siruk, or just El, if it please you. Like the proud Nopon among you, we have inhabited this planet since times of antiquity.
A weirdly articulate alien with, abs, trying to use human lingo that he learned from the lifehold unit. Specifically, a data unit, which the Ganglion are trying to destroy. It's here we meet our first real villain and problem, Mistress Goetia. In the story, she's supposed to be the threatening messenger of the fact the Ganglion intend to wipe out humanity, and that she is in fact the first big bad. But personally, I mean, look at her. Like I mentioned before, I don't usually mind sexy designs, but this one's just comical, and for me it did take away from the story slightly just because I thought it was kinda dumb. And I still thought this even later on, as unlike Myth or Pyro who have sexy designs, she doesn't get a good arc like them at all, not really making up for it. And that after fighting her, she just leaves, not really leaving an impact that she's a threat. Despite the fact that we lost a lifehold unit, which when arriving back, Elma mentions is more dire than it seems. As to most of our party, Blade Command, and even us as a player, we just lost a unit of the lifehold and not an actual piece of living humanity.
No. We confirmed it was one of the archive units. Unit number 07.
07? That would be the LC repository, wouldn't it?
One of 3, but yes. The entirety of the Library of Congress archives. As I recall, the data was stored on units 07 through 09.
Well, thank God it wasn't the core. This situation could have been a lot worse.
I wonder... The LC archives contained nearly every published work in mankind's history. It's not like it's just a bunch of random books and manuscripts, you know. It's a history of human thought, a record of opinions and emotions.
I mean, yeah, sure, but...
So if you stop and consider what it means to lose even a third of that data, it's a cultural and historical loss of catastrophic proportions.
Meaning that if this can't be restored from parity data, we just lost 1/3 of humanity's entirety history of thought, making this genuinely a catastrophic loss for not just the people here on New LA right now, but the future generations to come. Imagine living on a foreign planet and having no knowledge of the history of where we came. You wouldn't know how to learn from mistakes of the past, as there's genuinely no information on this existing in your lifetime outside of word of mouth. Going even deeper, we can even in theory have a Warhammer 40k issue and lose vital information on how things were made or done if we lose the other two, making every piece of this life old incredibly important for us to find, and narratively adds a lot of pressure for you to recover even the small pieces in the wild, as any piece destroyed is a direct attack not just on mankind, but on mankind's legacy. However, it's the next chapter of the story that puts the real pressure on with a few details. Chapter 5 starts with us noticing another ship get downed on Mira right into Oblivia, causing our party to go and investigate to see if they're friendly or not. When entering Oblivia, Tatsu mentions how weird our naming conventions are, a seemingly nothing statement that becomes useful shortly after we see the Manons, our third friendly race that actually arrived here a year prior to us.
Hang on, maybe I can pick up what they're saying.
Impossible! I'm telling you, just us is impossible, okay? Stop talking like that, would you? We have to do this, right? For everyone back on the ship. But how are we supposed to destroy the turrets? This place is likely crawling with ganglion, no?
They do have the only voices I actually don't like, with a weird squeaky effect that I find really weird, but not as weird as what Elma mentions now.
Tatsu, the ganglion, and now these Manon. Don't you find it a little odd that we can understand these alien languages?
Good point. Right? Must be something like that.
But we haven't been using our comm devices when we've been talking with Tatsu.
Well, Tatsu is fluent. More or less.
Tatsu, did you study our language?
Friend's language?
What language are we speaking right now?
What language? Nopon, of course. Friend's Nopon very good, by the way.
See? Xenoforms have different anatomy, physiology, different vocal setups in general. It seems likely they would struggle with our pronunciations. And yet here we are, conversing.
But if they can't even produce the sounds, this shouldn't be possible.
I have never actually seen this addressed in any show or game ever, and it does make sense to ask this question. I also love how this makes Mira more alien and mysterious for the player, encouraging them to make their own ideas on what it could be. Is this the result of a hyper-advanced civilization we see the ruins of? Is the planet a natural planet at all? Or could it even be something magical or mystical? Whatever it is, it's something we can't focus on now, as we gotta talk to the squeaky voice people, who we broker peace in exchange for sorting the ganglion behind the ship with AA guns. So we do as such in the only area that gave me a few problems. First of all, we have to fight these AA gun guys as mentioned, but they're surrounded by enemies patrolling the base that tended to be a higher level or just many. This personally led to me getting killed a lot here due to not leveling too much. And this actually encouraged me to go farm for about 3 hours on one enemy to hit level 30, which took way too long but was absolutely worth it. Especially after we destroyed the AA guns, only to be ambushed by 3 alien skells, making them not really a thing unique to humanity. Something thematically I find hilarious, as 4 blokes with guns and swords took down a mech with giant guns. It kind of has the same energy as playing a tabletop game, or RTS, and the last soldier in a squad manages to bayonet or shoot down a gigantic unit like a mech or airship with a pistol. It's when downing them all we get Xenoblade X's real twist.
What? A friend is a robot?
I'm gonna block all feedback to the nervous circuits. Still hurt?
Humanity's bodies here aren't real. We are a machine with our eyes wide open, known as mimiosomes. Everyone here is, in fact, because humanity wanted a crew that could live forever without the worry of death, since the trip could take years and years to actually find any home. Space is big, after all, and that lifehold we're so desperate for actually contains our real human bodies, making finding it more important than we realize, as if it does fail or get destroyed, once again reiterating how important it is to find it and secure it. I'd actually think of this kind of like Nier's Gestalt project, where the plan was to go back into our real bodies, but has the chance of going very poorly in a situation like this. It only has the benefit right now that if someone dies, they aren't really dead and can be moved to a new mimiosome, or just left in their real body. But the danger of this is once again emphasized by Elma's secret, that the big number on NLA Tower actually represents the power of the lifehold, which is currently going down due to losing its generator. Which, when you think about it, seems kinda obvious, and if I was a resident of New LA, I would be slightly concerned about a percent meter that's going down day by day, but I digress. This also makes this explanation from Elma once again feel like she is the main character and we're just kind of observing events. Eventually coming to, we get to see the last stages of our agreement with the Manon, as they part with the info that the Ganglion that destroyed Earth and have been hounding us are but a very tiny part of the galactic community. Then their ship arrives. Our third partner here on Mira, and the one with the biggest physical impact, as that ship will remain here in New LA for the rest of the game. Our next few chapters are actually kinda linked together with the central theme, starting us off with the scene of the Ganglion failing horribly against a seemingly empowered bunch of indigents. The Ganglion Command themselves continue to throw their men at this losing battle for something known as the Old One. Our mission is given to us as a result of this. We are to go and collect the wreckage of a giant scale in the area. But these indigents only react to life, meaning us humans are fit for this job in our mimiosomes, due to the whole not alive thing. But our alien allies are not, requiring only humans being capable of going. Before the mission, we learn Lao is assigned to our team, and he asks a bit about Lynn, where we learn the real reason why she's here.
Speaking of which, it's pretty amazing you made White Whale crew at your age. You have family here?
My mom and dad passed away. They didn't make it.
That day? The attack on Earth?
No, sir. It was before that. An accident.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. My parents were both design engineers who worked on the White Whale project. But there was a mishap with the primary engine test. Still, it's thanks to them and people like them that the rest of us are all still here, you know? They made the White Whale spaceworthy, so they didn't die in vain. At least, that's what I like to think.
I see. So they gave you a spot on the White Whale to say thanks. Thanks to your parents for all their hard work.
It's a debt I try to repay every day, helping out folks any way I can.
Don't misunderstand, Lau. Lynn earned her spot on the crew like anyone else. It was her talent and determination that made it happen. Her parents' positions provided an environment for her to learn in. That's it. Lynn got to where she is now entirely on her own.
It's okay, Elma.
No, she's right. Sometimes I talk before thinking. Sorry about that.
A bit of skill, but also the fact her parents died to get to the White Whale functional. A big reason on why she feels like she has to take care of it, but it's mission time. Our plan actually works flawlessly, and getting to the skull is quite easy, just a short walk. That is until Tatsu, who snuck onto the helicopters sent to secure the skull, jumps down to bring us food. An actually sweet but really stupid plan, as now we have to fight the enemies we went through all this trouble to avoid. And while this fight plays in the back, let's talk about that theme I mentioned earlier. The corruption on the enemies, the Ganglion Great One, and even this skull are actually never ever explained really, and will semi-disappear from the plot with only the Great One and the skull showing up in the form of Ganglion leader Luxar using and mentioning it. This is a result of cut content, but also a sequel we have never seen, making these seemingly interesting questions rather annoying, especially since this game keeps bringing things up like this and dropping it. I will say, I like how this game tells its story, but it's moments like these that makes its delivery actually quite annoying and disconnecting when I start to expect events related to the mysteries of the universe in Mira itself to never really hold importance because it won't ever be explained. Then on the other hand, we get something like before where we really need to pay attention to save NPCs' lives, or something like our next scene where we see the Rothrians, which have hot cat girls, but will do the opposite where they almost explain the entire premise of the race within one scene.
Perhaps the great hero of Roth does not enjoy taking orders from the Ganglion. Perhaps he feels it beneath him.
It appears nothing is beneath me of late.
I still hear the anger in your voice, the way you spit out the words. Accept your fate. Then you might find me a more accommodating master, Prince Jarg. Oh, but how rude of me. Should I have said former prince?
I never cared much for titles. Counselor Luxar.
It's Grand Master, damn you! The entire Ganglion organization is at my command, as are you and your people. I will not remind you again.
Oh, but how rude of me. My sincere apologies, Grand Counselor.
Have you also forgotten the price the Rothian people will pay if you fail me? I promise you, it will not be pretty.
I still find the events to come interesting, but we don't have much to discover about the race themselves, removing some intrigue for me, even if I did end up liking them in the end. But regardless, after delivering this mysterious skill to the new LA, two big things happen. One is that Vandam orders the scientists in the city to study it and make a new type of skull based on it called the Ares. The other is, he actually orders us to finally get skill training, which is a bit of a lengthy process where we actually have to get our license by completing a mission for every branch of blade. But realistically, it's not as many tasks as you might think, since some of you probably already finished or will automatically finish it, depending on how much exploration you've done, rewarding you a bit for actually taking some initiative. People I've talked to about this found the license to be a bit annoying, but also respected it due to being a thing you never really see in a game before, actually making you go through the same process of every single skill pilot before you. And like them, I totally agree, as it makes you feel even more like a part of Mira, when you are genuinely forced to go through a process like this to prove yourself, since skulls just can't be thrown around to any person due to their scarcity here. Our next chapters in the middle to endgame are where things actually start to pick up after you get that skill, and it's here where I actually fell in love with X. With our chapter starting with Irina and her team, who we met in the beginning, finding a lifehold unit in Oblivia, which for obvious reasons we go to assist, and it's just there in the open with nothing out of the ordinary, besides the fact it feels way too easy. Which of course leads to an ambush by Goetia, who destroys the lifehold, and reveals more than she should know as someone not on the inside of Blade.
The stain of humanity.
Of course, the true pleasure will come from watching your real bodies burn. Not that I won't enjoy trashing these crude puppets of yours. It'll certainly be enough to tide me over for the time being. Till the real fun begins.
Then they know about the life hold and pins.
You primate. We know all about your kind. Your fool's errand to gather these trinkets. Your race against time.
Human extinction is inevitable.
I could simply wait for you to talk about now, but where's the fun in that? I much prefer to see the looks on your faces.
How your features melt in fear as you twisted.
We finally kill her here, leaving her as one of my least favorite and memorable villains in the series, with little fanfare. But after this, for some reason Elma reveals the Ganglion wants to destroy the Lifehold to wipe humanity out, which, let's be honest, is pretty obvious and should be known by even the Nopons. But given how odd this event was and now the timer on Blade Tower's down to 20%, it's safe to say we don't have much time to ponder these questions anymore, especially with the fantastic Chapter 8, where things go from bad to worse. We begin with our daily attempt at cooking Tatsu being interrupted by alarms blaring all over New LA, warning of a massive Ganglion force approaching, with all blades and equipment being set on duty for this defense. This chapter has us holding the line with the main fighting force while Lau and his team defends the black skull we got earlier.
Attention Ganglion! Your army has unlawfully crossed New LA's defense perimeter.
You have 10 seconds to hold your advance and agree to negotiate. If you do not comply, we will have no choice but to interpret your actions as a declaration of war and launch our counterattack. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All units open fire!
Deploying while we fight here is one hell of an experience as we push back wave after wave while seeing an army of skells and blades fighting along you. This is pretty awesome, but kinda sucks with a couple illusion breaking things. One is that this area is stupidly tight, with not a whole lot of space, and your allies are just kinda shooting into the void endlessly. What are you aiming at? Normally, you wouldn't notice, but if you, like me, kill stuff way too fast for the waves to spawn, you might actually think it's bugged or broken, just being forced here to wait until the next wave spawns. We fight here till we thin the herds enough for them to launch a massive missile strike, which we get an awesome cutscene for, where one of Irina's squadmates and friends gets killed in a sacrifice. Which sadly isn't enough as the Ganglion breached the walls of NLA, prompting Lau to have his team ditch the Black Skull, and where we get another lame boss NPC with a weird design. This is another case of a boss that you will absolutely forget as a Xenoblade. But actually getting into New LA and seeing its destroyed state was another great experience that genuinely reminded me of the feeling during the Citadel mission near the end of Mass Effect 3, where we see the Citadel under siege by Cerberus and fight through familiar locations, giving you a real attachment to the events going on here. After fighting feisty mean anime alien, we learn it was all a ruse for the Ganglion Rothians to absolutely destroy the team in the hangar, even though they had a shit ton of guns and skells. They did this in order to capture the Black Skull, with the main force in full retreat with it. Elma tries to cheer everyone up with the main character speech that we won in defending New LA, which is technically true, but still worrying when you think about the fact why they retreated, definitely succeeding in one of their goals. And internally for Blade, Elma's becoming suspicious of Lau's little disappearing act right before the attack, as the Blade Tower percent drops to 14. For the next few chapters, Combat and keeping this heightened pace is the name of the game, and has the most impactful combat sections. The first is when attempting to find a new lifehold unit Lau's team went missing trying to locate. Along the way, we find an injured and odd Lau who's trying to convince us not to go since his team was completely wiped out, bar him. One sad attempt to get Lyn not to go with us leads to our team finding the Rothians. The warrior cat race we saw a few times earlier finally met in the flesh. This is one of the few cases where you can put decent feeling input if you agree to fight them and appease their warrior culture to get them off your backs. This was actually one of my favorite fights in the game, with 2 stages, one on foot and another versus Skells. And at this point, the entire party had Skells, making Skell versus Skell combat a real treat, especially when beating them and they're genuinely reasonable. Skip ahead to home camp and we return with Lau, who seems like he wants to admit something to Doug, which Doug refutes and tells him to rest. As Elma finally admits she thinks Lau is the traitor to us and Doug, but Doug does make the fair point that we should at least give him the chance to explain why he helped them, especially since he was there since the beginning. This is a decent moment that if you have half a brain you would know from a mile away. Lau was very obviously suspicious from his first meeting, and it seemed too obvious all the time that it wasn't really a surprise, especially with Lau planning the mission to get the Black Skell and getting a cutscene before that where the Ganglion talk about someone potentially trustworthy. A problem Elma admits to the rest of the team now that Blade Tower's at 9%. Meanwhile, the game realizes they probably should do something with those bosses from New LA called Reese and Dogon, and what they do is steal a mech from the Ganglion to do their own thing, which we see soon after we go to repair a probe since all of them will eventually fail without regular maintenance and software updates. But the pressure's building on Lyn with her having a bit of a breakdown at the state of things.
We've searched all over this planet looking for the Lifehold core. What if it's not even here? What if the whole thing smashed to bits when it crashed down?
You know that's not possible.
Do I?
Our consciousnesses aren't here. They're controlling these MIMs remotely from the core. It can't have been destroyed. In fact, it has to be somewhere relatively close, or we would feel the lag.
You're right. I just...
It's okay, Lyn. I know you're tired. It's been a long couple of months. Being inside these MIMs takes its toll on all of us. It's only natural to feel like this. But I promise, it's going to be all right.
She's worried that if we can really live here and if the Lifehold unit really is still intact, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense since we'd be dead and we're still surviving here and making
Why
friends.
would you make an
But
artificial
given
body
we've
that
lost
can
every
cry
Lifehold
tears?
so far, New LA was attacked,
So
we have a traitor, we haven't found the Lifehold core, and the tower's approaching 0, things do look bleak, and it's impressive someone as young as her has held it together so far. Luckily, we're able to cheer her up and laugh at how funny that the MIMs we inhabit are just like real bodies in even the weirdest ways. This is interrupted by the mech Reese and Dogon Stole making its giant appearance, being the biggest enemy you will fight before far into in-game. It has lots of limbs you can target, with most being up high, meaning you really do need everyone to have a Skell for this fight, or it's a bit of a struggle. But when you do have Skells, they go down incredibly easy, turning this seemingly giant threat into a bit of a schmuck you steamroll within a couple of minutes. Kind of like Adam Smasher, who was built up across all media to be a badass, only to get 1 to 2 shot when you actually get to him. To be fair, this is an MMORPG thing you can't really avoid outside of level scaling the enemy, which isn't really a thing Xenoblade likes to do. The next chapter, we get to finally cook Tatsu.
Now!
Commander?
It's Lau. Hey, get away from that! Elma, get your butts over here!
Only for Lau to reveal what we all knew. He's a traitor, but we can't stop him due to him having the data needed to locate the Lifehold core on his body, so we could potentially damage it by trying to stop him. So we just kind of let him monologue on his plans to take the new Ares scale and the data, but also about how he hates the Ganglion just as much as Blade right now.
Explain yourself, Lau.
You should have let me die that day, Elma. You knew the truth. That I was a Ganglion spy.
What?
I had my suspicions, but I didn't want to believe it.
Your mistake. It'll cost you. The data and your newest skell, the Prog Ares. The ganglion will appreciate the gift.
Boy, I am gonna kick your ass so hard, your real body will feel it.
Not if you value your precious data.
Wow! What the hell's going on here?
Oh, look at this. The whole gang's coming out to say goodbye.
What the hell, Lau?
Hold your fire. He's got the only copy of that data on his mem.
This should be a pretty climactic scene, and it is thematically, but from a storytelling point of view, it's kind of a little frustrating for me as the player, since once again our deduction skills really didn't matter here, since the real main character Elma figured it all out for us and didn't do anything about it when he was perfectly contained in the medical pod. I'll say it again, I like this story, but I really don't like how Elma is used to drive it. It makes it very clear that Elma is the really important one here, and that she honestly should have been the main character, since she realistically is. You can technically simulate this by playing as her the whole game, but it's not quite the same since you do need cross. Since Lau deleted all her data, you have to hunt him down a ganglion HQ in Caldros and retrieve the data with or without the supply pod. To get to him, we have to take quite the trek through the HQ that is honestly a hell of a trip that I did actually get lost in a few times. You are forced on foot for about half this time until you can get your skeleton, and fight with that elevator for about 10 minutes like I did. Finally reaching Lau, he reveals what we didn't know. We allegedly are already dead and are living a lie as the ganglion are afraid of us getting real bodies for some reason. It's up for him to stop and free us. During battle, he pilots the Skell he stole, being a somewhat normal Skell battle without too much difficulty, till about half health where he reveals something once again.
This is wrong. Humanity should have died out along with the Earth. We should have let nature take its course and accepted our fate.
You don't believe that, Lau. If you did, you would have never volunteered to work on Project Exodus in the first place. Or on the White Whale's crew.
Well, I was a believer once. I honestly thought we could pull it off. I knew we couldn't save everyone, of course. Billions of people in that time frame. But a cross-section of races, religions? Yes, it felt like all the usual politics disappeared. People from different countries had to come together. There was no other choice. This was survival. So I signed up.
So what happened?
It was all lies. If you weren't rich, or connected, or part of the first world elite, you got left to die on Earth.
Project Exodus was cruel and selective, not choosing humanity and its relatives, but if you were rich, connected, or somewhat valuable. Something Elma responds to in a weird way, which Lau notices. Meaning, Lau's family was left behind and killed because they weren't rich or valuable enough, enraging him rightfully so. It's actually pretty easy to relate to Lau here, as how would you like if your loved ones couldn't make the cut because rich people could and they weren't deemed valuable enough? It's fair he feels this way, but not fair that he thinks it's up for him to play God and end humanity himself. But upon defeating the broken Lau, Lin, us, and Tatsu work together to spare him despite what he's done. And he actually just agrees to give us the data, given what he sees of us trying to save him.
No, Elma, not like this!
Step aside, Lin. If I can shut down his mem, there's still a good chance we can extract the data afterwards.
No, damn it, that's not even the point! We're all on the same side here!
You.
You too?
Thank you. Elma, listen. I understand Lau's anger. I lost my family to an accident a long time ago. But if someone promised me a chance of saving them, and that was all a self-serving lie, who knows what I would do?
Lindley.
It's disturbing, and corrupt, and disgusting, and yet, that's exactly what makes us human. Maybe we really should have been wiped out of existence. But then...
Lynn. The data terminal. Take it.
What? But Lao...
I'm abandoning my little crusade. Guess I'm just as corrupt as anyone else.
Lao.
I changed my mind.
Changed your mind?
I thought this was about them, but somewhere along the way, it became about me. And about revenge.
It's over now.
So go.
Really fast turnaround, but he's not all in, and we have to kind of force him to come with us and agree not to kill himself or do anything crazy. Even Tatsu tries in his own way, being one of his actually great moments in the story.
Tatsu will split special lunchbox with Lao. Because Lindley says Lao not allowed to die. So Lao stay alive for Lindley or else Tatsu kill him.
Returning to base, the moment is nigh, with us locating the Liefeld core in the middle of the ocean off Caldros. This is right on time as the power's running out. Blade makes an announcement across New LA and prepares everyone for battle. We get to pick our last party member, as well as them having a new dialogue to say about what's happening. And don't worry about who you pick because there is a payoff for when we do head to the core, with a giant skeletal where we get to see every single party member and named NPC rushing to its defense as it's under attack by the last of the Ganglion forces.
And we won't get a second chance. All units, this is your commander, Elma. My team will take point. We'll breach the core and then once inside, attempt to activate the backup power. Doug, Irina, Gwyn, and Elle, you're with us. All other teams, focus on clearing our approach, then defend our position once we're in. That is your priority, not destroying all enemy craft. Are we clear?
Team Grossada, roger!
Trishula, roger! Ningursu, roger.
Balma, roger.
Team Surtur, roger. We'll take out any hostiles along your approach.
Breach team, let's go!
Roger!
For us, we can just push right through to the main objective since we aren't actually supposed to engage with any of the enemies here, but do note, this is the point of no return. Our final mission is now to go and return power to the core, to prevent us from dying and also getting the shields up so the Ganglion don't bust in and destroy it. We then immediately cut to said Ganglion panicking over something called the failsafe, and that we might be related to something called the Founders. We also learn that the tech we have, we really shouldn't. The Ganglion leader Luxar in a rage uses the Black Scale to personally attack the shields, destroying them. Getting to the core, it's weirdly empty, which Elma is about to explain, before Luxar finally shows up in person with the Black Scale.
Then where are all the people we brought with us from Earth?
You're all controlling these MIMs from your real bodies, asleep in stasis. That's the explanation you were given by NLA, or should I say ECP officials. That was the official story, but it's not the whole truth.
Colonel, what do you mean?
Wretched humans, you'd be dead already if it wasn't for that blasted barrier.
And instead of just shooting him during his monologue, we let them talk about how the Black Scale isn't complete yet, and that Luxar is fighting for the fate of the Ganglion. Luxar's battle sadly doesn't include all of us here, but just the party we actually have. It's basically just a scale battle till he monologues again.
I confess, you were right about one. I was indeed fearful of humanity, of your threat. At the dawn of the cosmos, the Samarians arrived from another plane. We can are forbidden from turning against them. If we ever tried, we would be destroyed. I thought that it was just a myth. And yet here you are,
The descendants of Samar! You miserable human!
So, this is interesting, but is cut content with no explanation outside of the fact that we are the descendants of an alien race, which sounds a little like the Forerunners from Halo, which were human. Practically speaking for now, it's just the reason why the alien want to fight us. They don't want to be destroyed by humanity or enslaved by us, making them a little more understandable at the end of the game, while explaining they hate us so much. Their boss after this phase is definitely the most complicated, with enemy balls causing him to be immune and do more damage, but it's not too difficult if you can control them. It's after killing him where we get our first real twist.
I've never seen one anywhere near that size, but it looks like a 7th generation quantum mainframe.
That's exactly right. It's by far the most technologically advanced computer humanity has ever created, in terms of both speed and capacity. It's also the foundation for the Earth Life Colonization Project. It's where all your consciousnesses have been recorded.
What? Elma, you mean...
Yes, that's what I mean. And not just everyone in New LA. The essence of all 20 million humans we brought with us from Earth are there, including all their memories, their genetic makeup, anything and everything. It's all been digitized and stored away in the core, right up there.
Then, what about our bodies?
You mean the originals all this data was sampled from? They were destroyed, along with the Earth.
Then, wait, you mean we're already dead?
Yep. We're basically androids going off of data from real people. Humanity that managed to get away on the White Whale are actually all dead, now just machines. And the crew are reasonably freaking out for existential reasons, since their original bodies are dead and gone, raising the question on if they're really them or not. Looking at it from a soma and practical point of view, they are something new and not the same as they originally were. But from a near point of view, they are the same person, just different. Either way, they are here and alive. And now with a chance to come back with bits of goop. You see, the White Whale preserved all genetic data of Earth in weird genetic tubes, because you wouldn't know this was gene data otherwise, right? Letting everyone and everything back on Earth be remade. While this is good, Doug brings up a good point.
It sounds too good to be true.
It is too good to be true. Our bodies were real. We were born in them. And now you just snap your fingers and bam, we get new ones? Is that even right? Doesn't feel like it. Are we even humans anymore? Transferring our memories? Playing musical chairs with our bodies? Where do you draw the line? How do I know I'll be the same person I was wherever I end up?
But so does Elma. Consciousness is what makes us human. It doesn't matter that we're robots. Everyone here on Mira, including us, all still lived like real people, making friends and enemies, finding love, finding hope, and finding ourselves. For some people, it might be hard to accept this truth, like Lau, who went crazy as a result, but in the end came around, proving that in the end, no matter the result, we did save humanity and Earth's legacy. And it's our responsibility to move on and see what this future brings for everybody, especially since all of our new alien friends here don't really care after all we've done. To them, we're still just the people of New LA. Of course, our sweet moment is ruined by Luxar, somehow still alive, damaging the core, and it activates its gross, horrific, umbrella-looking monsters to defend itself, before Lau returns to kill Luxar himself, while we hold off the Icky Ickies. Holding the line, Lau shows that he really did come around, and is living proof that what Project Exodus and the White Whale represented could come true. No matter what, we can find a new purpose regardless of our situation. Lau and Luxar are then combined into a Birkin-looking monster that we have to sadly kill due to his memories and Luxar's combining, driving him absolutely nuts. This is a fight that is very easy as long as you target limbs and focus them down. The hardest part of this was actually being the ads that come to help him, and me running out of fuel due to how long this fight actually was. As you fight him, he has moments of clarity where he gives us the truth of how humanity's flesh itself can kill the ganglions. And it's why they were so scared of us, He then wishes us a fair goodbye. But the party then gives me a real ethical problem when talking about Lao. They want to bring him back from the dead to deal with his crimes. But to me, he was already redeemed and lived a good life. And bringing dead people like that to pay for crimes is very dystopian and very bad, despite how fun they make this sound that he might come back. Especially since he isn't really consenting to it. But I digress, because the next twist is even more surprising and out of left field.
The truth is, exactly one MIM in New LA actually is being controlled remotely from a real body held in stasis here.
Wait, someone isn't stored in the database with the rest of us?
That's right. This was a special case.
The hell does that mean?
Better just to show you.
Elma is dead?
No. I think this is...
I haven't died. My consciousness has just returned to my real body.
Elma? Is that really you?
Yes. This is my true form. I was kept here in stasis, the only xenoform on board.
Wait a second. All this time you were an alien?
Elma is the only real individual in the White Crew, and also a sexy alien. With the design, I actually prefer the Blade version of, although this could be a plug suit type of clothes for her. Her and her species are responsible for the White Whale's survival, in addition to giving humanity technology they really shouldn't have access to, like the skells, probes, ships, weapons, and everything really, leaving us with a final montage.
Out to search for the planet we left behind.
This ending was actually amazing and tied everything in a really nice bow. We may have lost our bodies, but we can and will rebuild since we didn't lose much data. The Lifehold itself is under our control and the Ganglion are essentially routed, with the new leading force on Mira being Blade in the alliances we've managed to make. with as many of the aliens as possible, even having parts of the main warrior races of the gangland siding with us. We successfully found our way in place on Mira, with most of the cast coming to terms with their past and looking to the future, even Lau in his last moments. However, this ending is ruined by one big scene right after the credits.
What?
What is it, Elma? Is there a problem with the database?
No. That's impossible.
Elma, report. Elma!
Secretary. I'll stick to the facts. The system, everyone's consciousnesses and memories, the entire database, has been destroyed for some time.
Destroyed? What do you mean? Explain yourself.
The entire chamber is flooded. It's trashed. The system is completely shut down. And not just recently. It's been this way since we got to Mira.
That's absurd. Then how are we... How in the world would anyone be?
I know. So then why would you be alive? It's not possible. Without the database, all your identities should be gone too. It's this planet. It's something about this planet.
So yeah, cliffhanger that was supposed to lead into a second game where we would probably see a ton of the cut content and find the secrets of Mira, or if this game connects to the other two Chronicle games. But as you can tell by the fact there's no Xenoblade X2, this never came to be, and X didn't sell well at all, making it incredibly unlikely to see a sequel, but more likely to see a remake if we're lucky. As someone playing this for the first time, yeah, this totally sucked and soured that ending a bit, since we really don't know if that fight was worth it like they made you think so earlier. And what was up with Lau in that night, who, by the way, has an awesome design. But you know what, it didn't hold me down too bad personally, as the whole experience lets you kind of ignore that detail in the end due to how high quality it was. Still maintaining this as a game worthy of the Xenoblade name. Finally getting to Xenoblade X was one of the greatest decisions I think I've ever made, and I highly encourage you to do the same, even if you have to emulate like me. The gameplay, the world, the characters were 100% going out of my way to discover. Despite it being a different type of game than most Xenoblade fans expect, with less focus on plot and not really remotely interesting villains, it still really lived up to the title of the Chronicles game, telling a story of no matter where you end up, home is where you make it. And it's up to you to find your purpose and place in life. And it may be a struggle, but trying your best and being the best you can to the people you have the chance to get to know, and the people you have will give you purpose and a better life if you seek to find it.
We call this planet Mira. This place is our home now.
Hey, it's Malkador, and thanks for making it to the end. I put a lot of time into this guy and loved making it. So if you enjoyed, go ahead and drop us up for more content like this, and a like if you liked it, or a dislike if you didn't, and tell me about it in the comments. Until next time, where I think we'll finally check out one of my longtime loves, Mass Effect.